Hi, everyone. You found us. How are you? It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Welcome to the program. Lots to talk about today. If you've been following the news, there's really only one story, and that's the big development in the Middle East with the death, the killing of Yahya Sinwar. Who is Yahya Sinwar? Well, we'll talk about that. The leader of Hamas. You know, when I started covering Hamas years ago, or when I first encountered them during my, days just, reading the news, and Hamas was sort of good, bad, right? You'd see like all the good things they were doing, but then all the bad things they were doing, and it's just depends on their leadership, depends on the time, the circumstances, and now, right, for a year since October 7th, who was the guy who was behind that? That was Yahya Sinwar. And he was a president. We'll talk more about Sinwar, which is quite a name. If you don't know Yahya Sinwar, at least fixate on the name Yahya Sinwar and say, wow, how many people knew about, people who follow the news, how many people really knew Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas? You'd have to be a real Middle East nerd, because his name doesn't come up very often as one of the leaders of Hamas. Oh, he's the leader, he's the key man. But if in general, how many people who are really, who you'd consider, they're up with it, they know this stuff? I have to admit, Yahya Sinwar, I was fixed to try to find out, tell me more about him. So we'll talk more about him. Talk about her reaction, right? She gave the official statement, I guess, for the U.S. She was on television with a statement about it today. If you missed that, I'll play some of that. I read Michael Moore's statement about what's happening in Michigan and how Arab Americans feel about what's going on in Gaza, and what Michael Moore said that Harris had to do. And maybe this gives an opportunity for Harris to do something. How much closer to a ceasefire does this get us? Anyway, we'll talk about that. Talk about the Baier. Going to make a pun on Brett Baier's name. Taming the bear, exposing the bear. Brett Baier, I don't watch Fox that often. I'll watch it every now and then when they do something like have someone who's normally not on Fox go on. But I have to admit, I wasn't thinking about Brett Baier in full context. And then I started saying, this is the same Brett Baier who wanted Fox not to hold back, to slow roll the Arizona results and not put it out there. And he was in discussions with the now deposed Fox host Tucker Carlson. They were texting, and Brett Baier wanted to hold back. He's a Trump acolyte, posing as a journalist, Brett Baier. And so it was interesting to see him be the person at Fox interviewing Kamala Harris. Talk about that today and try to put Brett Baier in context. Also, I want to talk about, let's see, what else? I guess, Mitzi Gaynor. Mitzi Gaynor died today. She was 93. And if you're an Asian American, you know how important South Pacific, if you're an Asian American of a certain age, you know how important South Pacific is in terms of how people perceived Asians, how people perceive, it's nice music, but now in the present day, it's just dated. And I wrote an essay that came out in this book, Bigotry on Broadway, and I'll read a bit of it and I'll read more of it tomorrow. Here, this is the program, Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable, where I ask the question, WDAAAT, what does an Asian American think? And you're saying, oh, but Emil, you made yourself small compared to this thing, Mondays at 7 p.m. Oh, I'm putting that up there because Monday, November 4th, election eve, I'm going to be at the Marsh in San Francisco. I just, in the middle of a 3 storyteller thing. I'm in the middle. Show starts at 7. If you're at the Marsh in San Francisco, close by, you want to see me do a version or a portion of my show, Emil Amok, Lost NPR host, wily Filipino, vegan trans dad, probably doing most of the last part of that at the Marsh in San Francisco. It's November 4th, election eve. And of course, I will talk about the importance of the election at the beginning, because I'm grateful that you would take the time on Monday, if you're in San Francisco or nearby, to go see me. And I'll do a little show, sort of semi work in progress. I've done this show in New York. I've done it in Orlando and Fresno, a bit of it in San Francisco a year ago at the San Francisco Fringe. But this is kind of a newer, the shows are always developing. So a section I will do of that show Monday, November 4th. And then it repeats on not repeats, but I will come back on the 18th and I'll do another version of that. Of course, I'll probably, if things go wrong, if we don't go out there and vote, I might have more to say about being a vegan trans dad and what that means. But anyway, I'm just showing you the place to get tickets for the Monday Night Marsh. It's you can also stream it. But wouldn't you rather see me in person? Because you say, I'm so used to seeing Emil just like in his closet, in his COVID. We're out of COVID. We're out of, although I swear, I got the vaccine, the latest, and a lot of people said, "Oh, get the Novo Spike," but there's been some questions about Novo Spike and their stock tanked, because now they're looking into something happened to some guy. Novamax is saying, "Oh, it's not conclusive," but a lot of people were heralding this, the Nova Spike. I got some other spike, the Moderna. And I also got a separate Moderna and flu shot. So I think I'm good, but I feel the vaccine working. Maybe that's just me. I feel the vaccine working all the time. Like, it's out there, the stuff, the COVID stuff, the flu stuff. And I feel my shield like ding, 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 like flicking off all the bacteria. Because your body reacts, right? You get heated up sometimes, right? That's your body reacting. That's the vaccine working. I know. And then you get a little sniffly, and then you're fine. Or maybe you develop a cough or something, a brief dry cough, and then you're fine. So I know if you haven't yet vaxxed up and you're in a protected age, you know who you are. I'm not going to say. But anyway, go protect yourself. I think it's a good idea. You don't have to mask, although masking does identify you as a true believer in science. But I notice fewer and fewer people masking. I'll always mask on an airplane. But in public, sometimes I won't mask. Some people I know mask, and they bring an air thing with them, an air purifier. I don't go that far, but there are times when I'm in public. I was at an open mic last night, and I wish I had an air purifier. I wish I could have purified the microphone. But anyway, by the time I got up, almost half the crowd was gone. They said, Emil's coming up. Emil's coming. And then it had no effect. They did not come back. They did not come back into the room. Anyway, definitely check me out November 4th and 18th. November 4th especially, because that's such a big pre-election eve day. And while I'm talking about all that stuff, did you already vote? We can vote now in some states. Did you already vote? I hope you voted. I voted early. It's the only way to like move on, You say, hey, look, I don't have to pay attention to those stupid ads. I don't have to pay attention to the latest interview. I don't have to pay attention to anyone talking about I voted already. I'm already in. I placed my bet. And so I'm kind of objective. I mean, in the sense that, I guess I'm not objective. If I voted, I've taken a side. But long-standing argument, should journalists, should they even vote? Well, I don't know. Just because you are now using the First Amendment to speak your mind and to report the truth or to get at the truth doesn't mean you have to give up your right to vote. I don't think. But, there are editors who will say that. Anyway, I voted. You should too. See that? I don't think the T is an indicator of how I might have voted, but that is a uterine T, as you may or may not have noticed. And those of you who are just listening to the audio saying, what is he talking about? A uterine T? Well, imagine a uterus and imagine it as being part of the alphabet. The uterine T. Anyway, November 4th and 18th at the Marsh, Monday night, 7 p.m. Get your tickets. None of the tickets go, the proceeds go to me. It only goes to the Marsh. The Marsh is giving me stage time. I love the Marsh. I want to see the Marsh succeed on Monday nights. I think what they're doing is a public service to artists and also to audiences. Love the Marsh. They've helped develop me in my performance career. Oh, that stuff on Channel 4 you did, that wasn't performance. That was a news guy. Just a news guy. But at the Marsh, that's the hub. I like, and from the Marsh, I've been to fringe festivals around the country, as far away as New York and Orlando and DC and San Diego and Fresno, the Rogue Festival down there, great fringe. I love fringe festivals, and but I'm not so obsessed. Like I have to go to the Big Daddy Fringe in Edinburgh. That's the baby reindeer story. Edinburgh, and everyone goes to Edinburgh, but Edinburgh is a grind. It's also expensive, and I can go to Edinburgh and shoot my budget, or I can go to like 3 or 4 fringes a year, which is like fine for me, and then do a couple open mics and do a couple of shows around town, self-produce some shows here, and then do this. I mean, that's what I do. Anyway, November 4th and 18th at the Marsh in San Francisco. Emil, Guillermo. They're billing me as Emil Guillermo, but it's Emil Amok, Lost NPR host, wildly Filipino vegan trans dad. The vegan trans dad part. Or a new expansion of that. 20 minutes. You'll like it. In San Francisco, you'll like it. So this is our show. I talk about stuff I'm doing. I talk about the news. We're going to get to the news. We're going to get to SinWar. But I also want to mention that my column, which has always been on the ALDEF site, aaldef.org/blog, is also now on AsAmNews. Yeah, AsAmNews. There it is. See, it's on the top half. They put it top of the fold. AsAmNews. And, if you say, God, you're still doing Asian American legal defense and education on the ALDEF blog. And I said, well, not exactly. I mean, all the columns that I did over the last 14 years are going to be on the ALDEF blog still, I hope, because they really, do represent an opinion, an Asian American opinion. What does an Asian American think? That you could see it right there on the LDEF blog. But we decided that, once my dear friend, executive director Margaret Fung, stepped down and a new executive director stepped in, that would be a turning of the page, as Kamala Harris would say. And so the column is still in a number of newspapers, the Oakland Post, the Filipino Inquirer or Philippine Inquirer, also the Hawaii Filipino Chronicle. So it's still in the Asian American ethnic press somewhere. So my streak continues. But a digital home, AsAmNews, a fine nonprofit run by a fine veteran journalist. And he once said something about how, Emil was in Channel 4 when I was just starting as a production assistant or writer or whatever he was. He was a writer, I think, wrote the news. And I think I was the entertainment reporter at the time. But Randall Yip has done a remarkable job with AsAmNews. And I said, hey, let me put the column on AsAmNews, because I've written for NBC Asian America. I was one of the first writers for them. I've written for, and then I was writing for ALDEF, and I wanted a national, all Asian American, Pan-Asian kind of thing. And AsAmNews was it. So there it is. First column, I talk about Kamala Harris's man I think, people think she has she has other problems too, but she was focused on the man problems. I talk about that. And I also talk about the comedy of voting. Because you see me, I'm holding the mic there. I was at a show in Las Vegas. And I met some other Asian American comics, and I talked to them about politics and comedy. And they said, well, I talk about it, but, I just talk. I want to make people laugh. And also, they want gigs. So it's kind of like people want you to be funny, and they don't want people walking out saying, he told a Trump joke, and now like half the crowd's offended. Or he told a pro-Kamala joke, and now the left side of the room has walked off. So read this column in AsAmNews, and also it's my homage to ALDEF and all the things that I've written. And if you don't know who Emil Guillermo is, or what he does, or what he's about, well, there's an explanation of how I got to writing a column, and how I've written a column for 14 years at ALDEF and 15 years before that at Asian Week. That makes it the 29th year of writing Emil Amok, which was the name of the column in 1995 in Asian Week, making next year the 30th year, which is a long time to be writing a column and shooting off your mouth about Asian American issues, I guess. But you can see it there, AsAmNews. It's really, I think, one of the most comprehensive site out there. It's a nonprofit, community-oriented. It's comprehensive in the sense that you've got an Asian American ethnicity in mind. There's something in there for you. And then, because let's face it, Asian American, the term itself, or AANHPI, Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, which is sort of what it's been known under the current Biden administration. It's a political construct, right? It's intended to be our umbrella in the Mai Tai. It's, the umbrella phrase that encapsulates all of us and says, hey, here you are, you're AANHPI, which is why when they say, oh, Asian Americans believe this, you have to wonder, oh, do they mean AANHPIs? Sometimes they do. And sometimes they don't. I mean, if you look at polls and you say, oh, did they poll NHPIs in there in that, as they got their sampling? I mean, I wonder sometimes, do they poll Filipinos? Or if they see a name like Guillermo, my last name, do they assume, oh, he must be Latino? He must be. They're not. Pollsters are not very. They're not, when it comes to things like that, they're not really advanced. They're barely advanced when it comes to the numbers. And the basic thing about polls, if you know anything about polls, number one, you got to be random. And number two, you got to have a large sampling. And then from that large sampling, you get enough to get a nationwide sampling. But basically, the key thing about a poll is randomness. Always got to be random. But then the other thing is, do you have enough people in your sampling so you can say Asian American anything? And generally speaking, people do not. Which is why most polling, as scientific as it is, some are better than others, and some are purely for entertainment purposes. It gives you a sense, but only a sense, and thank goodness it's just a snapshot in time, then you go on. Anyway, AsAmNews, you can watch me there or read the column every, I think Wednesday or Thursday we'll put in there. Some Emil Amok's takeout will be there. And I'm thankful to AsAmNews and to the readership at AsAmNews. And if you're tuning in for the first time, Emil Amok's takeout, this is show number 770. Hey, go to patreon.com/Emil Amok and get all the Emil Amok takeouts. I'm going to put them all there. And the way I tell people to use this show is, yeah, you can look at me. You can, look at the things that I share. Or you can say, oh, what kind of T-shirt does he have up in his closet now? And standing in front of a gong. But really, put it on your speakers or your whether you're watching it on the phone or listening to it on the phone. This is kind of like the private podcast. I mean, I don't put this show necessarily out on Podcastville, like, Apple Podcasts and, all those. No, you can only get this if you happen to be on Twitter or X and you see me posting there, or Facebook or YouTube. And then I don't know how long it goes there, but if you want everything, see, I mean, the reason I'm going to patreon.com/Emil Amok is because the algorithm sometimes doesn't show you, doesn't let you know that, hey, here's Emil's new show. Here's Emil's latest thing. And so we beat the algorithm, and, for a small fee, a couple bucks, I mean, you'd pay less for Emil Amok each month than you would for a meal at Jollibee. Not that I'd go to Jollibee, but maybe you would. And I'm a vegan, but I don't proselytize. I don't try to guilt you into being vegan, but I'm just saying. I think, yeah, for you can get a meal cheaper on Patreon than you would get a meal at Jollibee. That is true. That is true. So I hope you will join me. I'm going to be there because I resisted for such a long time going to Patreon, and other friends of mine have, and not with some mixed results. Although, look, there are people who have thrived on Patreon, and because they have huge followings, and they do well. But people with small followings, microscopic followings, even we can benefit. So go to Patreon, patreon.com/Emil Amok, and sign up and become go amok on Patreon. Like I said, you'll get a meal for less on Patreon than you would at your favorite Asian ethnic restaurant. That's just the truth. All right, so we get all the plugs out of the way, and so SinWar, the name Yaya, right? That's like a term of endearment. And here's this terrorist, right, who is said to have given the okay on the October 7th, attacks. They claimed, 1,200 lives, 250 hostages. SinWar. And then, look, I'm Catholic, right? So sin, I'm attracted to that war, or that name. SinWar. Talk about a mnemonic device that doesn't quit. SinWar. They found him sort of by accident. It wasn't intel. It was like rank and file IDF guys going on some kind of duty, and they were led to this this place, and they attacked it. In the rubble they found SinWar. It's like that's like a gift. Like I said, it wasn't intel. And then they spent most of the morning here on the West Coast and East Coast trying to figure out, and let's confirm this. And of course, everyone knew it was, because they could tell by the pictures, but they wanted DNA and they wanted fingerprints tested, and it was confirmed. And the significance of this is really important, because we were at a stalemate, right? We were not going anywhere fast on this. And now, of course, we are. And, well, one would hope, because we have a solid end, the decapitation of Hamas, not the end of Hamas, but the decapitation. And now we can move in a new direction. And maybe that new direction is the ceasefire, that elusive ceasefire, that no one seemed to budge on those final 3 points that would get us there. And even the U.S. and Blinken and Biden had seemed to give up until maybe after the election. And now this happens. And the real key beneficiary is Netanyahu, because Netanyahu now gets to say, hey, we got him. Eye for an eye. We got him. And yeah, he's out there today saying, yeah, we got him. And so it gives him the authority. He's in trouble in his homeland. People are tired. They want an end to all this. Now he can say, okay, now let's go in that new direction. Now, is that new direction peace? We don't know. Who's he talking to? Who is going to be filling in the vacuum for Hamas after SinWar? And because really, Netanyahu was probably more of an obstacle than SinWar in terms of the United States pushing for a ceasefire. Netanyahu wasn't going to do it until he could look good himself, but he could have just listened to the United States. The United States is so, is backing him so much that he should be more deferential to the U.S. in many respects. But he was holding on, but now he got what he wanted. And now we're just crossing our fingers, hoping that it leads to the kind of peace that we all want. That's the simple way to put this. Of course, it's more complicated than that because we don't know. We don't know what's happening with Hamas. We haven't destroyed the organization. The Israelis haven't destroyed the organization, but they've decapitated the head. And that's as much as what Kamala Harris said today on SinWar. She said that, let's see. She said, today, I can only hope that the families, let's see, where are we here?
Today, I can only hope that the families of the victims of Hamas feel a sense and measure of relief. SinWar was the mastermind of October 7, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. A terrorist attack that killed 1,200 innocent people and included horrific sexual violence and more than 250 hostages taken into Gaza, including 7 Americans, living and deceased, who remain in captivity. A terrorist attack that triggered a devastating war in Gaza, a war that has led to unconscionable suffering of many innocent Palestinians and greater instability throughout the Middle East. In the past year, American special operations and intelligence personnel have worked closely with their Israeli counterparts to locate and track SinWar and other Hamas leaders.
Okay, so I hope you can hear that. Sometimes it's audible and sometimes not. But basically, she just said Israeli confirmed that Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, is dead. And she went over the numbers about what Sinwar was the mastermind of the October 7th attack, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. 1,200 innocent people, 250 hostages taken into Gaza, including 7 Americans living and deceased who remain in captivity. So she said that, but she says, we will always bring you, she says, and I think this is important. It's a warning to all those who might come bubbling up in the Hamas pipeline. She says,
we will always bring you to justice. Israel has a right to defend itself, and the threat Hamas poses to Israel must be eliminated. Today, there is clear progress toward that goal. Hamas is decimated, and its leadership is eliminated. This moment gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. And it must end such that Israel is secure. The hostages are released. The suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
So that really is the key part, right? She acknowledges the confirmation, and then she says that there is clear progress toward the goal that is, that the danger to Israel must be eliminated. She says, Hamas is decimated. Its leadership is eliminated. The moment gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. That's as hopeful as it gets in Mideast diplomacy. A clear statement like that. She says, the moment gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza, and it must end such that Israel is secure. The hostages are released. The suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination. And it is time for the day after to begin without Hamas in power. So that's the guts of Harris's statement. And, you know, what this makes you realize is that how important it is, how important America is to all these things that happen on the world stage in the news, and how today 90% of all news organizations were prepared to talk about Brett Baier and the Fox interview of Harris yesterday on Fox. They're prepared to talk about that, what it means. They're prepared to talk about the race. They're prepared to talk about Trump. There are all these other things that got pushed off because this is a major development in this more than a year-long tragedy, right? It's been more than a year since October 7th happened, and Yahya Sinwar's death is a major development because now we can go and, as Kamala Harris likes to say, we can get to the next page. And keep in mind, yesterday in show 769, I talked about Michael Moore, what he was saying to Kamala Harris, because he was concerned about Michigan. He was concerned about the voters in Michigan, specifically Arab Americans, who they look at the Biden administration and they look what's happening in Gaza, and they can't vote, or they're holding up their vote or holding up their commitment because they just don't see the progress. And it's a good strategy to a point, but I don't know if voting for Donald Trump is really an option. And I don't know if, well, we know what Harris has said in the past. She's called for a ceasefire. She's also vice president. She also doesn't have the kind of push or the kind of, pull in the administration. Or maybe she does, but basically Biden's for a ceasefire too. He just has been letting Netanyahu call the shots when it really should be the other way around. And so now we have this. Yahya Sinwar is gone. Harris is going to be, well, if Harris wants those votes, she can say what she wants. I think what she said in this statement, which she said as vice president and not necessarily as candidate, confirming that the Israelis say, yeah, this is Sinwar, and then saying there is clear progress toward the end of that goal, which is, Israel has a right to defend itself, and the threat Hamas poses to Israel must be eliminated. So she said, we're on target to that goal. This gives us an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. Which, God, it's not the war has ended. It's not we have won. It's we have this opportunity, and it's about as clear as it gets. This is as clear as it gets that they're moving toward that. The question is, will that be enough for Arab Americans? Will that be enough for people to unite behind her in Michigan? Because as some reports suggest, Kamala Harris is underwater in Michigan, and leading the heavy weight to keep her down underwater is the Arab American community, which has been disappointed in what they haven't seen from the Biden-Harris administration. But maybe this is going to be the thing, because you know they're all on the swing state tours now, right? Through Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. They're all like, that's the race. That's why they're constantly on the move, both Harris and Trump. But imagine Trump saying something like this, saying what I just played from Harris. I don't know what Trump would have said. I don't know if Trump knows what he would have said. I just don't. And if you're still on the fence, who do you think would be a more effective leader? Who do you think would be the most effective messenger for you, your voice? I mean, knowing what you know about Harris and Trump, who would you like to see up there saying, yeah, we want to eliminate the threat of Hamas, and we want to move for peace, and we want to stand together. You know, we want the hostages released. You want the suffering in Gaza to end, and the Palestinian people to realize their right to dignity, security, and freedom and self-determination. I mean, I don't know if I would hear those words coming out of Donald Trump's mouth. Do you think? But who could say, yes, we need to eliminate, who could say Israel has a right to defend itself, Hamas must be eliminated, or the threat that Hamas poses must be eliminated? I think Harris would be far more effective and eloquent. Just judging from the rhetoric that I've seen just the last couple days. You just have to see the rhetoric the last couple days. Since last Sunday, when Donald Trump went after the enemy within. Oh, yeah, it's not just the immigrants, it's the enemy within. The enemy within. And he wasn't talking about immigrants. He was talking about so-called radicals on the left. Americans with First Amendment rights. That's who he was talking about. And I think this is a perfect dovetail into talking about what would have been the big story yesterday or today, which was the big story yesterday. We do this show at 2 p.m. Pacific Live, and then we leave, and then I went to see Brett Baier interview Kamala Harris on Fox, and I thought, oh yeah, that's going to be tomorrow's story, and already people have talked about it, basically saying, oh, it's kind of a Rorschach test. People will get whatever they'll get. From your perspective, I think there was a clear winner. Forget Rorschach. You'll just expose your bias on a pure, unbiased level, looking at that debate. Or it wasn't even debate, but it wasn't supposed to be a debate. It was supposed to be an interview. But it was a debate because Trump was there in Brett Baier drag. I mean, you don't think, but you got to look back to 2020. I mean, there are a number of stories. CNN put out a story on 2023, May 9th, 2023, talking about Brett Baier and his reputation as a reporter that could take a hit, because the Daily Beast reported that Baier and now former host Tucker Carlson engaged in a conversation on November 4th, 2020, about potentially delaying Fox News' call of the election. Both men complained that they were receiving blowback from the Trump-supporting viewers over the network's controversial early projection that then candidate Joe Biden would win the state of Arizona, putting him on the brink of capturing the White House. This is what Tucker Carlson wrote to Bret Baier. We need to do something to reassure our core audience. They're our whole business model. And Bret Baier replied that he had been pushing for answers. He then added, according to the Daily Beast, I have pressed them to slow, and I think they will slow walk Nevada. Days later, the network was in fact the last to call the presidency for Biden. And this is the fair and balanced Bret Baier, right? The fair and he's not fair. He's not balanced. And so when you look at that interview yesterday, keep in mind that what you were seeing was Bret Baier, who's been exposed. I mean, it wasn't just, the text messages that were revealed back in 23, but also New York Times reporters, Peter Baker, Susan Glasser, they came out with a book, and they pretty much exposed Bret Baier as being a Trump acolyte, maybe not as bad as Tucker Carlson, or not as obvious as Tucker Carlson. But you saw the way that interview was set up yesterday, right? Where Bret Baier just goes after Kamala Harris on immigration. And of course, she just wants to cut to the chase. Say, look, say what you will with all these prefatory remarks. The correct way to interview is not to front load it with your information to show that here's my research and here's what shows that your answer is wrong. That is a way of inserting yourself as Trump into the debate. You can just ask her the open-ended question. So how are you going to solve the immigration problem? That would have been the proper way a non-biased reporter would have asked that question. Instead, prefaced it with some number, and really he was trying to set up talking about all these people who were victims of crimes committed by immigrants, which is, of course, a pretty biased way to get at the immigration problem if you want to know how to solve the immigration problem. And Kamala Harris has her answer at the ready. It always is. From day one, we worked on immigration. On day one, we were working toward a plan. We had a plan, and it was put together, engineered, bipartisan effort, led by an ultra-conservative. We had a plan all set to pass, and at the last minute, Donald Trump told his cronies in the Senate not to pass it. That's the answer. I mean, some people say, okay, well, what's your idea? Well, the idea was in that bill, right? They were going to help out the Border Patrol. They're going to give more money. They're going to get more judges. They're going to do all the things that would have solved the problem. But as Kamala Harris says, they weren't interested in solving the problem. They were interested in playing politics. So, and then Bret Baier's question was really set up to get to here are the victims. And if you don't believe me, here are the victims testifying. Like, do you really have to play that? I mean, this is an interview, not a debate. But Bret Baier, knowing that Donald Trump can't debate, won't debate, said, I'm going to be the debate proxy. This interview is going to be the debate proxy, and I'm going to come in hard. I'm coming in smoking hard. But that would have some credibility if Brett Baier wasn't a dyed-in-the-wool Trumper. If he was, I mean, I know journalists like this who are really hard asses for the truth. You ask the hard question and you get at the truth. But if you've proven by your actions, like slow rolling or trying to delay the call from your network that Joe Biden has won because it might hurt your Trump supporters and your Trump viewers. I mean, you're biased. And the honest reporter would come in hard and unbiased and just ask the question, what about this? What about immigration? And then in the way it was set up with video at the ready of hearings of families of victims. Oh, look at these poor victims. Don't you owe these people an apology? Well, what kind of question is that? Of course. And Kamala Harris said, of course, I want to apologize to these people. But doesn't Donald Trump owe these people an apology because this could have been solved? Had Donald Trump not called off his congressional cronies to say, don't pass the bill. Anyway, something that you may not have seen yesterday also, they had a Univision, I think it was Trump. I didn't see it in Univision, but I did see a clip showing the kids who've been separated by their parents. And, you know, because mothers had their babies grabbed from them, families were separated at the border. That was Trump's doing. So I guess this was Brett Baier's way of getting back at, the Biden-Harris administration. Hey, because of your laws or because of your actions, these good conservative people, they suffered tragedies. Okay, come on. I mean, after a while, it was just like, just ask the question and move on. Brett Baier, like I said, most people who follow the news all the time would have known, oh, Brett Baier, he's like a double for Trump. He's like a stand-in. He's not objective. The only thing that I thought was interesting is when he said, he kept interrupting and then made Kamala Harris angry, which was good because people haven't seen that side, that emotional side of Kamala Harris. I think a lot of people wanted to see an emotional side of Kamala Harris. I think people wanted to see her get like, I think that worked for her. Kamala Harris saying, will you let me finish? Will you let me finish? And then what did Brett Baier say? Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Because he's just trying to hide the fact that he's just another Trump surrogate at Fox. So the border thing went sour for Fox, I thought. One thing that Harris did well was she said, my administration is not going to be a continuation of the Biden administration. Because the Biden administration was Biden's. And she was just the vice president. And her administration is going to be totally different. But it all depends on the Senate and the House. If the Democrats have the Senate and the House, it'll be much easier. If they don't, if they have it like it is now, the Senate, but not the House, it'll be like it is now. Kind of not quite as robust as it could have been because there was no perceived mandate. But that's if they lose the Senate and they Yeah, that's if they keep the Senate and lose the House. Now, if they have both the Senate and the House, it still will be tough, but there's a clear path if they control the Senate and the House. If they have the House and not the Senate, well, that's probably worse than having the Senate and not the House. That's just more gridlock. But still, a lot can be done through executive action, and that's the fear. Even if Harris loses, you got Trump in there, and even if I don't even, it's so close in the House and Senate races. Can't really say. You can just sort of game out the scenarios and say, wow, which one could you withstand and not, and still feel good about your country? Because if the vote doesn't come out right, it could be a long 4 years. With the earliest that anything could be done, 2 years, midterm. But Trump is already looking to litigate the vote, to negate your vote by litigating it, and then who knows where we are. I think that is a problem. That is the real problem that no one wants to talk about now. There's a lot of things no one wants to talk about now because you don't want to jump the gun. I mean, certainly the issues that came up in that Brett Baier debate, what about the border? What about, what about the continuation of the Biden administration? No. It's going to be the Harris administration. What about turning the page? What do you mean by turning the page? And I think it's starting to come clear to people. By turning the page, we need an end to the kind of contentious rhetoric, the kind of BS that divides us. That's a change. It's not, a Harris or a Biden administration or turning a page on that, although we will. If Harris wins, it'll be her administration. But it really is, how do you end Trump? How do you end Trump's hold on the Republican Party so we can have decent discussions, decent exchanges on trying to solve problems, so we can solve problems? How do we do that? And you don't do that unless you turn the page on MAGA, you turn the page on what MAGA means and what it's done to discourse and what it's done to polarize the country. And the way Trump is doing it is, fear, doom, gloom. It's going to be terrible. She's stupid. We're going to be a terrible country. Tell me the substantive things that Trump wants to do. Well, he can't say those things because they're in Project 2025. And he'll say, oh, that's not me. I don't know anything to do with it. All the people he's going to hire are going to come out of Heritage, the Heritage Foundation, or Heritage, that group. I've been to their offices. I know Heritage. But, all of them are going to come out of that. And the Project 2025, all those ideas are going to float to the top. Washington insiders saying, oh, think tanks put out stuff all the time. But these guys have an inside track. So Trump is playing stupid, but Project 2025 says it all. That's what he's going to do. We're not really talking about that. That didn't come up in this interview. We're not talking about really the economy. The economy only comes up in the context of, oh, well, that's a continuation of Biden-Harris. No, not exactly. In fact, the economy is doing better. I mean, the stock market, if you want to go by that barometer, the stock market, another record highs, stock market. again, consistently. Yeah. And yet, people think, oh, it's bad. The economy is bad if you're paying more than you were 4 years ago for stuff, groceries, and maybe your wages haven't been keeping up. But the real bad thing is, if you want to see price increases, just wait till Donald Trump's tariffs, which he doesn't really quite understand, when they come into play, and 20% increases in prices, all that will be passed on to you, the consumer. That's the way to look at that. Anyway, I think that Bret Baier, no one thinks about Bret Baier. If you're just a Fox viewer, you like Fox, you like Bret Baier, you like Trump, so no big deal. But when Bret Baier is put out in the national spotlight, in an important, because there's no debates coming up anymore. In less than 3 weeks, there's no time. So this is a proxy debate, a proxy milestone, and the milestone here is it exposed Bret Baier and exposed Fox once again. And number two, it showed Kamala Harris is no nonsense, spiky. And what I liked about it is on the border question, she came back and said, Donald, I've prosecuted cartels. I know how to go after the bad guys. Donald Trump knows how to dance to the village people. I go after the bad guys. I'm a badass. I'm Kamala Harris, and I have a gun and handcuffs. Gotta hand it to her. I mean, I just think that was a good interview for her. And if so much, there was so much at stake here that you had to look at it. If it was just for information, you might give Bret Baier a pass and say, yeah, he got stuff out of it. Something happened there. But if you haven't really been thinking about Bret Baier and may have forgotten his transgressions of the past, you got to wonder why he's still working at Fox. Probably the only place he could work. Well, he could probably work at Newsmax, probably work at One America, all those places. But here's the fact. If that was a person of color, if Bret Baier was Asian or Latino or black, it never would happen, right? But if he were, high paid, anchor, Fox, person of color, would he get a pass? Hell no. White male, Trump-like, got a pass. You might say, oh, come on, Emil. They even got rid of Tucker Carlson. Well, they had to get rid of Tucker Carlson. Because of all the things he was doing that was non-journalistic. But think about that. They got rid of Tucker Carlson. They kept Bret Baier because Baier wasn't as obvious. But the fact is, he really is. All right, that's it for our show today. Try to keep these to about an hour or so. Just talking about stuff. Tomorrow, I'll talk about Mitzi Gaynor. She wasn't really the blonde I grew up with. But, people know that South Pacific thing where she's like showing, and, getting the hair right, getting that man right out of her hair, right? Washing that man right out of her hair. People know South Pacific songs. But I wrote my essay, Bigotry on Broadway, neither cockeyed nor an optimistic about South Pacific, by Emil Guillermo here. Anthology by Ishmael Reed and Carla Blank. If Ensign Nellie Forbush, USN, is the cockeyed optimist, make me the modern Asian American pessimist. The South Pacific has been hailed ever since it came on the scene in 1949 as Rogers and Hammerstein's antidote to bigotry. I remain unmoved. It was never an antidote to anything of the sort. Rather, it was an enabler that flashed its own toned-down bigotry for a mostly privileged white theater audience of its day. And the audience got just what it wanted, toothsome tunes to forget their troubles while sipping a Mai Tai fantasy. My essay on Misty Gaynor. Bigotry on Broadway. I'll put it out there tomorrow. I'll read it. So, Swish. Yes, Swish out. Some quick things here. Don't forget, AsAmNews. Love that AsAmNews. The new kind of go-to place if you miss going to the ALDEF site for the latest columns from Emil Amok. There it is. AsAmNews. AsAmNews.org, I believe. You can catch it there. You can also, don't forget, you can do this as well. Let's see, what is that? Share screen. Oh, also, you can see me live August 4th. Live August 4th. San Francisco's Marsh Theater. Monday Night Marsh. It's on Valencia Street, Valencia and 21st. Go to the website. Let's see. www.themarsh.org/Monday-night-marsh-stream. And then you get to this website and you can click and you buy a ticket. Sliding scale. Like I said, I don't get any of the money. They give me a space. I share the stage with 3 other storytellers and performers. But I love the Marsh, and I want the Marsh to succeed. I want the community to support the Marsh. So, buy a ticket. See me November 4th and 18th at 7:00, and that should do it. I'm not going to do laughter yoga. I'm going to leave laughter yoga up to the Patreons. If you want to see me do laughter yoga, I'll do. I gave a little hint at the end, but basically, I'll explain why laughter yoga is meaningful. Basically, you got to laugh for about a minute. That's how it's done. And here's the thing, and you do it like maybe in 5-minute spurts. It's great for the abs. It really. I mean, I've got a 2-pack. I mean, if I went to the gym, maybe I'd have a 6, but I got a 2-pack. At my age, I have a 2-pack, all from Laughter Yogi or Yoga. I'm the Laughter Yogi. I can explain it. You got to go to the Patreon. I'll do a Laughter Yoga session, and that's where I'm doing. Patreon.com/Emil Amok. Anyway, Laughter Yoga. It's not a comedy. It's voluntary laughter. You volunteer to laugh. You don't say, okay, make me laugh, big boy comedian. Hey, no. We laugh at everything. Okay, all right. Laugh. Can you laugh for a minute? Here we go. Hello. 45 seconds. Ah, 104. You can feel it. The oxygen flow through your body from the abs up, belly laughs. It's constant. I mean, if you went to a comedy club like I did last night and waited to get a minute of laughter like that, you'd be waiting a long time. There's some funny people there too. But there's something about laughter yoga that gets the oxygen going, the bad air goes out, the good air comes in, you feel good, oxygenation of the bloodstream, endorphins, dopamine, oxytocin, everything, all the feel good chemicals in your body. You feel energized, you feel healthy. And science has proven you can't tell the difference from the effects of real laughter versus simulated or voluntary laughter. It's all the same to the body. That's sort of the same thing as, things to the subconscious. Something happens. Your mind doesn't distinguish between what's real, what's not real. To the subconscious, it's all impacting you. So that makes sense to me. But also physically, you get the physical sensation of the laughter. Makes a difference. Instead of a cup of coffee, I do a minute of laughter yoga for world peace. It's actually a good time to do a minute for world peace today. So we wind down, we think, we ruminate, we do standard yoga meditation, 3 breaths in, out, and then we say goodbye with a little loving kindness. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. That's it for our show today. Don't forget, check out all the shows you missed. Go to patreon.com/Emil Amok. Tomorrow I'm getting a root canal. So I'll be ready with that South Pacific essay. Till next time, Emil Amok here.